All right, hello.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. I'm Chris Lytle with the Martha's Vineyard Commission. And I'm just
I think it's just the three of us, so.
just the three of you.
Well, Will is not joining. I didn't hear from Bernie or Ben.
And Brian's not.
And I don't know, I didn't hear from Brian either.
Peter usually zooms in.
Peter's been hit and
Yeah,
miss. Yeah.
I don't know if there was some confusion regarding the starting time.
Well, noticed that Lucy did not publish it last week. And her
Yeah,
email to everybody
yeah,
on Friday.
Initially, and then it got revised, and then it did get put on the schedule, but it's actually on the schedule for today, but starting at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I
Oh.
noticed that too.
I didn't look at that because Adam and I agreed that we would do it earlier.
I'm
Yeah.
here because of you sent out a notice, it was 2:30.
Yeah.
So.
I have to be someplace at 4:30, so I can't stay.
Right. Sure. Well, I guess, we can go through this now and then, I'll see if anyone shows up at 4 o'clock and perhaps have a
Sorry.
redo, whatever, or,
Well, how much I don't know the answer to this, but how much are we constrained by what we put on the website as a public notice? Since all of our meetings are supposed to be public, and if we didn't let people know it was 2:30, are we in
Well,
trouble?
if we record it, I guess we could play it back at 4 o'clock.
I was just thinking that too.
right.
Okay,
I am recording it.
okay, great. That means it's, hopefully, I don't know the legalities of this.
Yeah. Don't either. So, all right, so last week or so, the materials that I'm going to present, were sent out, I think, to all of those.
Yeah, Adam sent this out as a PowerPoint 10 days ago.
Yeah. So I was just gonna walk through it and, certainly let me know if you have any questions, if you have any comments about any of these data layers, process, for how all of this feeds into the Open Space Guideline Plan. But the way it currently works, there's about 23 different data layers and they all get synthesized together based on a weighting scale. And then there's one synthesized map that comes out of that, the Open Space Guideline.
The weighting
Yeah.
scale, I couldn't determine whether there was little numbers after each one.
Correct, yeah, that's what it is.
And is there a formula?
Well, the formula is very simple. All the data layers just basically, spatially fall where they do, and then they all just get added together. So, if there are two layers that overlap, and one is given value of 15 and the other one's given a value of 5 together in the synthesized map, that location would have value of.
And 20 makes it exceptional.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the more layers on any particular parcel, more likelihood it becomes over 20.
True, yeah,
So there's bias to your point earlier about how many things overlap, like coastal flood, 200 feet, 1,000 feet from the water. By the time you get through those, you're already exceptional. And maybe you should be because it's waterfront.
Yeah, I guess that would be a good argument, but some things are almost by default going to have to be exceptional because of their location.
which, is really the whole idea behind the map, is that you are finding these exceptional locations. So. And then the rest of this presentation basically walks through the current 23 data sets, and has some recommendations for some perhaps that we might want to remove, and other data sets that we actually might want to add in. So, let's see.
Do we weight the data sets at all?
Um,
Is some, is one thing more important than another?
right, exactly, yeah. That's, the whole weighting scale, and as we go through, I've indicated the current weight
Mhm.
that each data layer gets.
Okay.
And the rating scale, is anywhere from 1 to 20, 20 being regarded as the most important.
So I guess I somehow missed that there was weighting assigned.
That's all right, I'll just point it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And I chatted with Adam a little bit this morning, and his thinking going forward is that there certainly would still be, a synthesized open space guideline map, once we confirm which data sets we want and what weighting scale that would be. But I think one of the changes going forward is simply that in the beginning, every DRI project would have, instead of sort of just immediately jumping to that synthesized map, and being like, hey, this area on this property, gets rated as exceptional or somewhat important. It would clearly show all the data layers, that,
Mhm.
fall on that parcel, just so everybody sort of has a very clear understanding of all the.
So I have a dumb question when I'm looking at some of these maps about the wetlands. Some of the points that are on here are like coastal bluffs. Are they by definition a wetland?
Yes, yeah, so all of, that wetland area that's presented on the map, it all comes from the states. DCR, wetland.
So this is from the state. Yeah, because I didn't see that in the credits at the bottom, but
I can,
well, maybe it says projection mass state plane. Is that where I should be looking for it?
there's a data source, on the lower right corner
Right,
of the map, and
but that gives credit to the Martha's Vineyard Commission.
so at the start, it said compiled by, but then right below that, it said data sources. And the data source, obviously changes with each map. So the first map here in the presentation we're looking at happens to be the wetlands. Okay, I see your point. I indicated here, yes, this is the wetlands data, that's from the bundle of open space guideline data that the commission has put together. But the initial primary source of the data is the state's DEP wetlands data set.
Is it important to know that
That
it's from the state?
yeah,
know.
because there's the wetland data that's put out by Mass DEP, and then there's different wetland data sets that are put out there by different agencies, like the National Wetlands Inventory. So certainly knowing, the source of the data.
Well, I guess I'm thinking in terms of its application. So long as they know it's coming from us, does it matter where we get our information to the people who are going to be using this?
Well, I mean, I think it's always good to be transparent. Because certainly, I'm not a certified wetlands mapper,
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out, how do I put this? Well, there has to go back to some acceptable standard. In other words, do we have to go back to the state, or can it just be something that we've created and that's good enough? Because right now you're saying it comes from the MVC, and I'm not sure how important it is to know it comes from the state if we're the one who's promulgating the map and how we're rating. I don't know if I'm explaining this well at all.
Referencing the state is a backs us up. It gives us more.
It gives us, yeah, okay, well, that's what I guess I'm thinking is, and is it an acceptable standard so that it puts the state as, on the hook, so to speak.
Well, the state would have promulgated it through for DEP.
Right, but it doesn't say DEP, it says MVC right now.
Um,
And I'm trying to figure out whether it needs to say state or not.
right,
I don't think it would hurt.
no, I don't think it hurts at all. I'm, you know,
I don't want to add to the little things you're putting down here.
no, it's totally fine.
Legend.
I unfortunately, sometimes you put these things together and you try and streamline the whole process a little bit. Certainly, it's no difficulty whatsoever to indicate on each prospective map, primary source from which the data came. I have all that information.
No, I guess I'm feeling very defensive these days. And from a legal standpoint, what is it we need to show as evidence as to why we've reached this conclusion, that this is what it is?
Mhm.
And is it good enough to say it's us and we've decided that this is where the wetland is, and, or do we need to have the state behind us?
Well, I think the more transparent you can be about where your data came from, the better credibility you have, because, again,
Mhm.
we're not the ones saying this is a wetland. It's really Mass DEP that's saying this is the wetland location. All the commission is doing is trying to figure out how to take that environment habitat information and use it for planning purposes.
I think that's Kate's point. Is knowing that it is the states, not the MPCs, who designate this as wetlands is maybe important to have there.
Right.
Sure. I totally agree. That's really not a difficult thing to change on the map. I don't.
Okay, so I mean, it's just changing the legend.
Yeah.
When I look at this one and I look at the next one, is it possible to integrate the two? I mean, maybe do pink in one and, I don't know, blue in another, or whatever, purple in one and,
But they each get different scores.
So,
do they?
So-
I can't figure out where the scoring is.
so,
It's right
yeah,
after the word wetlands, it says
yeah,
20,
so the scoring,
that's 20 points. And
right,
then you see within 200 feet, it's only 6 points.
Okay,
right. So each, it's like having a puzzle, and each of these data sets is just one piece of a puzzle. And each piece of the puzzle gets its own weight. And then the whole synthesized map is just the process of putting those pieces together. So as we move from wetlands, which were given a value of 20, then we move to the wetland buffer of 200 feet from that wetland. And this is given a value of 6. With these two data sets, they're, the only recommendation is to just keep them, for the next iteration.
okay, got it.
So next we have the core habitat. And in this presentation.
Can I ask one more question
Sure.
about wetland buffer areas? Does it make any difference in terms of the buffering, what the soil composition is near the wetland?
Well, the buffer is just a distance. It's really
I
not.
understand, but I mean, in other words, if we're trying to protect a wetland and the soil adjacent to it is very porous or coarse, our ability to protect it is less than if it's, you know, a clay barrier. That's, I guess, why I'm asking the question, because in some places, you know, it may be that 200 is not enough and we need more, or in other places, it may be that 200 is more than enough. Do we make any determination like that?
Presently, we don't. Um,
I mean, I'm not a geologist, so I don't want to try playing one. I'm just asking the question.
yeah. I mean, presently, we don't factor that in to
Mm-hmm.
width of the buffer. You know, the width of the buffer. For some towns, you know, they use the state mandate of a 100-foot buffer from wetlands, you know, for like conservation commission review. But then there are some conservation commissions, you know, per town where they've actually increased the buffer to 200 feet. So certainly having our buffer be 200 feet, it's within the realm of reason,
Okay.
so to speak.
Yeah, Edgerton has 100, 200, 300, and you can do certain things within each of the ranges.
Okay.
This sounds like it could be a separate overlay.
Well, it is.
Which is,
This is the overlay of 200 feet.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's why my question arises.
graduated one. You're looking for a graduated one.
I don't know what I'm
Based on-
looking for.
on
That's why I'm
soil-
asking the
On
question.
soil content and
Yeah.
mm,
I mean, I'm just
Well,
wondering.
you're trying to figure out the impact,
Right.
you know, what's the impact of this? If everything's just classified 200, but some 200 feet doesn't, it's more like 500 in another spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we doing a fair thing?
Right.
Say, okay, I can't build it because we're within 200. Anyway, this is the clay cliffs. Yeah, there's nothing
Right.
here. Nothing's getting through.
Or, you know, I mean, in some cases, people have built and because it's sandy and relatively close, relatively low lying, but not wetland, you get saltwater incursion
Mhm.
into things. And I don't know how we want to think about that. But I do know that in Katama, there has been saltwater incursion into wells. I'm asking a question I don't know the answer to.
right, I mean, it's,
I hate doing that, but
you know, it's
No, you
certainly
don't.
something.
I do actually.
Distance alone
Can't
doesn't,
catch people that way.
distance alone doesn't measure what you're talking about.
It doesn't. That's true. And that's where I don't think we have anything about, do we have anything in this about soil composition?
We do, further along, we talk
Okay.
about prime agricultural.
But only about agricultural soil.
Right,
Right.
yep, that's,
I mean,
Yeah,
even
I
if we ask this question to geologists, depending on what we want to prioritize and value we want to protect, they may not know the answer either. So I think it maybe as we go along, it's probably useful to keep in mind like what it is that we want to protect or what it is that we're worried about. So that we could ask this question to geologists or ecologists or I
Well, it's a
don't know.
good point because really what we're trying to do is open space here. We're not trying to figure out nitrogen leaking into ponds or anything
Right.
like that. It's more about value of open space. So.
But we do care about the
Well, we
open
do, but I
space
think
also
it
addresses
could
that.
be- Well, does it?
I think it's supposed to.
you know, it's about looking at a site that where development is proposed and trying to figure out if there's certain area within that parcel or collection of parcels where if you locate the development here, then you will be impacting the environment
Versus, yeah,
in
Right.
other areas on that parcel. And, you know, environment, habitat, I mean, obviously that factors in the whole kit and caboodle of whether it's a wetland or it's, you know, habitat or endangered
Well,
fauna.
I guess it's the hydrology that I'm talking about. Because that's the water flow sort of below ground.
I think we look at that when we start looking at nitrogen and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
Watershed
get
and
to
all
it,
that
but
stuff.
yeah. Okay.
So moving on from the wetlands, the next one we have is core habitat.
And what's the definition of core?
So this comes from the Nature Conservancy's biomap project. And core habitat basically deals with
Okay, I know about this, yeah.
land that's contiguous.
Yeah.
It's contiguous, has enough.
They do it by aerial photography. If they see a couple trees, they call it a core habitat. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think they also factor into, records of where they documented
Yeah.
endangered species or rare,
But a lot of it, then you go through a
Right.
process of negotiation with the state as to what's core habitat right now. I guess my question coming out is looking at this is about 44% of the island is core habitat. If we add up all these open space for, which are 20 and above, which is critical concern, how much of the island, when you get through all this, is covered by that?
Hmm, I see, right, yeah.
I'm looking where your house is.
20 and above. Right.
Actually, we're pretty good. There's only a few lots which are, get affected by any of this. But
Yeah, I was gonna say, you look
I-
like you got just,
I-
where you hold your parties is.
I see it through that lens.
Mm.
How much of people's land and you say, hey, I'm sorry, it's, it has to be all open space.
Mhm.
And how much the island we're saying is
Mhm.
over 20.
Right, right.
And that'd be an interesting number because
Sure.
when it gets too high, you have to start to take a step back and question the whole, what are we doing? Because at that point, you're open to a lawsuit saying, all you're doing is say no, and you just find justification for doing it. So that's, to me, one of the questions I'd like to see is how much of the island, because some of these maps, it's a lot of the island.
Mhm.
I mean, prime agriculture and stuff like that, right? It's a lot of the island which is covered by this. If you add them all together, what does that
Right.
look like? And
Right.
I would love to see that number.
Yeah, I can calculate that, definitely. What was I gonna say? Oh, so the other thing to remember is, so while there's the synthesized map, you have to think about the language that's in the open space plan.
Yeah.
And, if there is an area on the parcel that is rated as exceptional, then what happens?
Right.
I'm honestly not, very.
Well, I think that's where we get into the policy piece of
Right,
what is it we
right.
want to say about
Yeah,
that.
I'm not very knowledgeable about how the open space policy actually implements the map. So I think your question, or your point really is, okay, so we might have all this land that does rate as exceptional, or, according to this methodology, but then how are you going to implement, development on that
Right.
site?
What can you say to that? Because
So-
if it's covering 70% of the island and you get too draconian, it's not defensible really at the end of the day. Or if you say, look, okay, maybe these scores are too high. Maybe certain things should be less, so only X% of the island is really what we
Or,
want to
but I mean,
be
or,
really concerned about.
or you sit there and you say, you don't want to deprive somebody of all that economic use of their property, but you want to say, we don't want you to build a sprawling, 22,000 square foot house.
Somebody's gonna come galloping in with two words. Arbitrary capricious.
Well, that's it. But I mean, if it shows up on all of these overlays and that we've gotten from the state, then it's not necessarily arbitrary and capricious. It's
Well,
using
what's
a
arbitrary
common.
and capricious is saying no to what you can
And-
do on that land. Just because it's been identified as core habitat. And
No,
Does
but
that mean-
restricting what you want to do on that land isn't depriving you of all that economic value. That's where you get into arbitrary and capricious.
but it can take away a lot of value.
it can take away some of the value, that's true.
It will.
I mean, you may recall that Mr. Shifter wanted to build a 12,000 square foot house out on the point of Chappie that is now in the water. And was told he could only build a 7,500 square foot house. And was also told
Well, that didn't
insane
take-
because
didn't
that
take
wasn't the
value-
last.
That didn't take value away from land. It would be saying you could only develop a piece of land way back, which didn't have the same views, to me would be taking value away from the land. Just saying the size of houses takes away value for him, but maybe not from the land. He could resell the land for the same price. Even with that restriction probably. It's different.
Yeah.
Gets into really legal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess we need to decide how much of that legal stuff define how we make decisions.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I can remember, 40 years ago when my mother built in Chilmark, most of the property was wetland.
Yeah.
And she was restricted from building on anything other than a very small parcel of the 10 acres because it was wetland. So, I mean, there is case law that says,
Wetlands is, I think, in a much solider ground,
mm,
part of that, but than some of the other areas, like prime agricultural land. Now, you have a map which has farmland, and I think everyone can say, okay, we want to keep the farmland. If it's an active farm, it'd have to go some hurdles to turn it into a development. Now, just because the soil on your property happens to be good for growing things, it's a tougher argument to make that you should not be able to develop that land.
and that has been historically an issue. Because if you say the soil is already disturbed and there's no special, moth or anything living on it, then people can argue that they want to turn it into a house.
Right.
Right. And it's happened. Oh,
Okay.
we could be here all
Moving
day.
on.
We actually keep going, yeah. If core habitat is defined as land contiguous with rare and endangered species on it or habitat, what is supporting habitat?
Supporting habitat, to get the exact wordage, yeah, I'd have to go back and revisit, the Nature Conservancy's biomap project. In general, the supporting habitat is land that's, adjacent to the core habitat. Yep. And again, it just provides a resource area, for different flora and fauna, across the state.
Well, why would that not be core habitat? I mean, I'm trying to understand what makes something, Supporting
I think
versus-
It has to do with basically the composition that's there and
okay,
the core habitat basically being sort of having more richness to it. As a general way to look at it.
It supports the wildlife better.
and then
Okay.
also it says that the long-term persistence of rare species, exemplary natural communities, the richness of it. But I think that term rare species, and I think they do know the locations. I think of those locations are not accessible to public, but I think we know the area, supporting. So I think
Mm,
the difference between them.
Like when they see a bunch of pine trees, they say, this is the habitat that moths like. So now that becomes critical.
okay.
So you look.
I mean, it seems to me that's the kind of thing we keep uncovering and discovering. Yeah, and when people inventory the land to see what's there.
Right, I mean, all of these data are subject to
Mhm.
change.
If you look hard enough, you're gonna find things.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if we need to be clear on the definitions of these things.
Right, so the supporting habitat receives a value of 6
Right,
in the weighting scale, compared to the core habitat, which receives a value of 20. Let's see, now we move into, the,
And just to
Mhm.
be clear on the core habitat, that's kind of a state run thing. It's over and above the
Is it?
NBC. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you have property with a core habitat and you want to develop and put a house on, you have to deal with state agencies to be able to locate the house on that.
And we probably need to be clear about which is state defined and which is us defining.
Right, right. Like I said, you know, I have the data sources for all of these. The majority of the data is really compiled by someone other than the NBC. Here with the watersheds, the watershed boundaries themselves were put together. It was a joint project through the Mass Estuaries Project and the NBC. Back when Bill Wilcox was our water planner. So in terms of delineating the watershed itself, you know, that's how those are put together. And then it's through water sampling that the commission provides, you know, that we're able to indicate where on the nitrogen loading scale on water quality is. So this particular watershed here, it's projected to pass its nitrogen limit. So it receives a very low value in the weighting scale because, you know, the water quality is trending towards the good. So it has value too. Compared to this map, these are watersheds where they're either at or they're beyond their nitrogen limit. Again, within our rating scale of 1 to 20, even though this is covering a large area of the island, the weighting scale, it's given a value of 4. So something to keep in mind, you know, going forward. You know, the recommendation is to.
Who's deciding the weighting scale?
The initial weighting scale was done back when we did the initial model back in like 2006.
Okay.
So, you know, it was NBC staff at the time, along with, you know, some reach out to some of the conservation groups and just talking to different, you know.
Has any effort been made to look at whether we're still continuing to weight things appropriately?
Not yet. That certainly
Okay.
is something that can be, you know, revisited, you know, now.
Well, I mean, if it was done 20 years ago, it's probably time to revisit it.
Yep. And yeah, that can definitely happen. So another current data set we have is 1,000 feet from coastal and navigable ponds. And recommendation is to keep this data set. It's simply given a weighting of a 6, just to, you know, provide that buffer from the coast and ponds.
So this is where I'm really curious, because you have 6 for 200 feet, you have 6 for 1,000 feet, so you're already at 12. Then the watershed adds a number 4 for most of that spot. So you're already at 16 before you find anything else, and 200 feet's another 6, you're already at 22 if you're at 1,000 feet almost. Well, within 200, you're definitely at over 20. But even 1,000 feet from any pond, you're up pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that some places are
Double
low.
dipping.
Yeah, well, but
That's all.
also some places near ponds are low and some places are,
Yeah.
to your point, higher up with more soil to absorb things
Yeah,
before it gets into the pond.
yeah, what's the problem with any macro?
I mean, I'm wondering if there's any way to sort of do a calculation that involves, you know, height along with proximity. Or elevation, I should say, along with proximity. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, because
It does. I would have to talk with some, like a hydrologist,
Hmm,
see to see how elevation,
I think in the definition of wetlands, it comes into play
to
because,
see how elevation would impact, if you're thinking that, that runoff or things gone into the groundwater would travel.
Well, I guess
slowly to the pond, if it's,
I'm
Well-
less concerned with runoff, mostly because so much of the soil near ponds is very sandy. At least near the ponds that are on this map anyway, is sandy, but in some cases you have much higher elevation. In some cases, you're down close to the pond level. And that makes a difference if, for instance, you're trying to perk for a septic.
I think that's the definition of wetlands. So like where our cabin is, that's wetlands, right? We tried to perk, that doesn't perk. Where our house is 25 feet up
Right.
and you
I
know,
don't think I've been in your cabin, so.
it's underwater at times.
Okay. Yeah, that wouldn't perk very well.
right,
And that's also changing, I've noticed.
Which,
Some of this stuff is changing because the ponds are retreating.
Hmm.
If you know what I mean. I mean, I just look at how much South Beach has retreated over my lifetime.
oh, well, that's true.
I'm sure the parking lot that we used,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
out at the
party.
farm was a lot further out. It is in the water now.
Yeah. Well, that parking lot's still the same, actually.
Oh,
Smaller, but the dunes are gone. That's the amazing difference.
yeah, there's that too. But I guess I'd like to see if there's some way to look at this in a slightly more sophisticated fashion that addresses the hydrology and the elevation along with the proximity to the water. And I don't know how difficult that is, but something tells me that if we apply a one size fits all to something, we can get pushback.
I can certainly look into it.
Yeah,
I'd have to try and find, someone knowledgeable.
It also gets
that
back
can
to our
answer that.
policy at the end of the day. If our policy says, look, this one size, we know it's not the end all, but it's saying we need to take a closer look. As you do development, then we dive in, we take a closer look and we say, oh, well, yeah, elevated, you're away from the pond.
yeah, if this
clay
is a
soil,
guideline, you're
things like
right.
that.
But I mean,
If it's more into this is how things are gonna be, that's where I think you're right, that becomes a problem. But if it's just a guideline to say, hey, okay, this raises this development to a different level, we need to look at it a little more closely, I think that's totally appropriate. And say, okay, now what do we look at? These are the things.
well, but that gets to my point about is, when I look at the next one and it says 200 feet, is 200 feet adequate? Is it too much? Is it too little? It's feels arbitrary to me.
Well, that's where distance alone
Yeah,
is not giving you necessary information.
yes. It may be enough to say we have to look at it.
200 feet, 1,000 feet, you start plugging in those things. Potentially, it's just arbitrary and capricious. Here's the argument. The notion of height and proximity, together with a third consideration, the hydrology,
Yeah,
brings it back into the more reasonable.
I guess the question in the back of my mind is how we use this. Because what we're identifying here is something that would need to happen if it fits, if it falls into this, then we need to look at the next level down, which is height, hydrology, et cetera.
Well, you can say, someone comes in and wants to develop, okay?
Mhm.
And it's within.
Mike wants to build his cabin 10 feet up.
Yeah, well, more to the point, he's 100 feet from the surface water,
Mhm.
all right? And he wants to be 10 feet up. but maybe 100 feet from the water isn't gonna make any difference. And 10 feet up isn't gonna make any difference based on
The hydrology,
hydrology.
yeah.
So you've got, what you wanna set up is some sort of warning system. Okay, this is the general. This is generally what
Mhm.
comes to our attention, but there's always room for something else
Yes,
to be looked at that can work to the benefit of the builder,
mhm.
almost as much as it can work to the detriment of what they're trying to do. It's clarifying. Because if you go by height and proximity alone, you don't get a really good answer here.
I agree. But then I still come back to, is this a guideline? Or is this something we're gonna use to say, this is a reason we won't allow you to do it? In other words, is this a guideline for you to look at, or is this, a guideline for us to have a ruling on?
I think it's hopeful. You publish this and you say, okay, builders, developers, you're here and you want to do A, B, C, and D. Well, look at this
See you
list
Thursday.
and see if you're going to have a problem somewhere along the way. And we should look at it. Those kinds of things should be a dog whistle. Hey, look here. Before we Continue.
Right, I guess the question, I still come back to, I can't figure out whether this is a policy to guide us or to guide somebody coming in with a proposal.
Both.
And they are, yeah,
Yeah, I believe it's both, to guide, to help guide the commissioners, to guide the developer to locate their development on that land in the area where it will have the least negative impact
Mhm.
on the environment. So it's not anything hard and fast set in stone. It's just based on, these data. We think your project should be, corralled into the northeast corner of that property, something like that. I think that's the general
I
gist of how the guideline works.
think theoretically, someone comes in and wants to build, say, take a look at overlays 1, 23, 24, 15. And that's what we're really gonna focus on. You don't look too bad. Or we know this area from other situations. The other overlays, but these 4 you gotta look up. Someone else comes in a different place, well, you need 1, 3, 7, 12, and 40.
Since we're looking at this one here of 200 feet, from surface water, sort of to Mike's point, there is a suggested modification, for the next iteration of this map, and that is to, rather than do 200 feet from the coastal ponds, any pond over 10 acres. The recommendation for the next iteration is simply just doing the 200-foot buffer from those ponds that are not navigable. Simply because on the previous one, we've already done 1,000-foot buffer on the navigable ponds. So this way, we're not sort of,
Double dipping, yeah.
Yeah,
Really
I mean, that
same
makes
area
sense. I
twice,
mean,
same idea.
how many ponds do we have over 10 acres that are,
It would really speak to 200 feet from these smaller,
yeah, is that the one by Wackesum's Rock, I guess?
yeah, that's out there in Chilmark.
Well,
Forget the name of it.
So
that looks like Cedar Tree Neck further up.
Right, yeah, so there aren't very many.
Yeah.
It's really, again, just these few smaller inland ponds, 200 feet.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And again, the whole idea of, looking at those ponds specifically that are over 10 acres, just that by state definition, pond over 10 acres is regarded as a great pond.
Well, it seems to me that when I look at this map, that everything on the second one is already pretty much encompassed by the first.
Exactly. That's why the
Yeah.
recommendation is not to buffer them,
Right,
this 200 feet because they've already been buffered 1,000 feet. So,
right. Okay, well, then,
Okay.
that's easy.
here we have frost bottoms. These were delineated by the Nature Conservancy. And, we're giving these a weight of 20.
Yeah.
Cultural landscape. This includes things like cemeteries, special ways, special places, Dr. Fisher Road District. Those are things that are already covered within districts of critical planning concern. So really the only suggested addition to this sort of cultural landscape map is scenic roads. Which the, various towns have their list of designated scenic roads. So, and these areas, this data set receives a weight of 20.
Do we have any that get 13? I see 6 and 20 used a lot.
Right. Here we have the coastal DCPC.
And how does this differ from the,
The 200 and the 1,000.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The delineation.
Actually, the DCPC seems to go encompass more because it goes upstream to anything that flows into the ponds.
Yeah, but to my point is
Right.
Yeah.
you're double counting, so you're already, you're doing 8 here, you're doing 6 for 1,000, you're doing 6 for 200, you're doing 6 for wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me we ought to be able to integrate the 1,000 feet from the coast and navigable ponds into the coastal DCPC. Because there's a high degree of overlap in them.
That's certainly an option, if we wanted to call it coastal DCPC, plus 1,000 feet from the ponds, and just make it one
Yeah,
set. And, true, yeah, that way. Locations that are both 1,000 feet from the pond and within the coastal DCPC. Don't end up sort of being counted twice.
yeah. I mean, right now, I think we're counting them twice. And one has a value of 8 and the other has a value of 6. I want to know where Nab's Corner is.
It's right at the boundary of West Tisbury and Shaw. As you go,
By the yoga board.
yeah, it's right around there.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I've never seen it on a map. That's why I was curious.
Let's see, here we have working farms. This is given a weight of 20. So. And.
Is this subject to change at all? I mean, it seems to
Um,
me that people have cleared land and created farmland where I don't remember it as a child.
I mean, certainly all of these data sets are
And-
subject to getting updated
Right,
and change.
right, and if you go back 100, and 20 years, there was an awful lot of open land up island that was considered farm that is now treed.
Mhm.
I'm just curious about how you think about this one.
What about the word working?
But working, yeah, that's the key one on this one, because the next one's prime agricultural. Working farm, I think it's critical. We don't want to lose those, right? So
No,
you want to make sure all working farms are included in the data set.
yeah, I guess what I'm saying though is that I feel like more than most of the other stuff we've looked at to date, this one is more fluid.
Well, what do you mean by a working farm? Is it cows and hay fields or vegetables, or is it just letting trees grow up?
Well, this is a tree farm. I would say
Well, I mean,
it's-
there are people who have it.
Working
There is a
farm.
tree farm across the street from the ag hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a farm.
and there are Christmas tree farms.
Mm-hmm.
Donorama has a couple.
Yeah.
Katama Way.
Yep,
But
I
some-
think that's
some
town
working-
land.
It is town land.
Yeah,
He leases it. Yeah.
Perhaps what was once a working farm is no longer a working farm. Is that what you mean?
or vice versa. It seems to me that between sort of the Civil War and 1950, that there was a lot that became trees,
Mhm.
which had been working, and that since roughly 1970, there's been more land that's been turned back into farm. I don't know, Mike, you've been around almost that long.
1850.
No, I'm just, by that, I'm going by maps and all
No,
the stone
I-
walls that exist that
No, I
obviously.
totally agree with that. And if you go back to 1700s, the whole vineyard almost was cleared for farming, because
Right.
that's how people live. But you go back 300 years and it probably wasn't.
Well, 1700, I'm afraid, was about 300 years ago.
Okay, 400 or 500.
Yeah,
It probably wasn't,
yeah.
because there weren't many people here. They didn't need to farm so much land.
And the Indians had a different view of how to use the land. I
Yeah.
agree. But that's why I'm asking the question is this a useful indication of something? Or is it better to be looking at the next one, which is agricultural soils?
Well, I think the reason why the farms is important, working farms, is because obviously those are critical. If a developer comes in and says, I want to turn this farm into housing development, that should hit the radar pretty strong.
Yeah, but would it hit the radar just as strongly if it was in prime agricultural soil?
Well, it probably is.
I
You
mean,
got 40% of the island prime agricultural. 39% of the island.
how the island defines prime agricultural, I find very
You
interesting.
can't give that 20.
So the prime agricultural soils,
And farmland.
is defined by the Natural Resource Conservation Service through the USDA.
Okay.
It's not a definition that the
Okay.
commission has made up. The thing to remember is that prime agricultural soils is not necessarily land that is currently farmed. Whereas, the previous data set, gets updated periodically based on aerial photographs and information from local farmers, that this is the area they're farming. And a working farm is producing something, whether it's grazing of livestock or, it's crops. To distinguish it from, say, a horse farm. It's not that.
Or doesn't include horse farms. Okay.
Does not include horse farms. Okay.
Should these two
Food farms.
categories be merged?
I don't see why why they should, because you can have a working farm on land that perhaps isn't regarded as prime agricultural soil, and
Yeah, I see one right here. I happen to know that Harley's old farm, my uncle's. The land bank owns it now. And it's showing as a working farm, which it isn't. There's one
Right,
where
okay.
they graze and stuff. But if you go under prime agricultural soils, it's not listed. And we actually, Catherine used to farm there as well.
so I do have one recommendation, regarding the prime ag soils. And that is actually, so what's shown on this map is prime agricultural soils along with sort of this second category of farmlands of statewide importance. And for the next iteration of guideline map, I'm suggesting that we just, use the portion that is prime agricultural soils, which is what I'm showing here in orange. So it would go from being this extensive purple coverage, to this more limited, prime agricultural soils.
So when you define prime agricultural soils and you reduce it, what is the difference? Is this something to do with hydrology? Is this something to do with soil composition? And by the way, hi, Ben. Just wanna
Yeah,
say-
hi. Yeah, I made it in time.
Thank you.
So what's happening is the recommendation is basically to remove this second category of farmlands of statewide importance, which, they're good soil. However, it's not regarded as, as top notch as the prime agricultural soil.
Okay.
Chris, can I ask a question, Chris, on how did they actually arrive at this data? Is this done from LiDAR? Is this done from some sort of aerial survey? I mean, I find these maps not really that useful because one, I don't think they're that accurate to the vineyard, actually. I wonder, why do you have it here and not there, but, in two different spots? There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And there's plenty of, Tisbury, I don't see any prime agricultural soil in Tisbury. But in the 1927, Tisbury got its own soil designation for the value of it. It's the Tisbury Till. And it only shows up in Tisbury and in a place in Connecticut. And it got its own designation based on the quality of it. And there was plenty of farming historically there. So I don't understand how this map actually gets formed.
I know there was an extensive soil survey done back in the 1980s. There's a soil survey of Dukes County from 1986.
Were those plots? They tested plots?
I'm pretty sure they came out and tested some plots. And then the updates that get made since then, the USDA has a process of kind of looking at different categories of soil. And based on their scientific research and such, some categories get kind of reclassified. And the data are periodically updated. Again, it's not necessarily from on-site, survey work.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm missing is a more quantitative measurement of why is this prime agriculture soil versus this area right next to it? What is it that's in the soil itself that they're identifying to make that delineation? And if we don't understand why, it's how useful is a map like this?
Right. I mean, I can certainly provide you with the explanation that's given in the soil survey book in terms of what makes a prime agricultural soil. To speak to exactly why it's delineated in the location that it is on the island. I could put you in touch with someone from the state who works with, USDA, their soil
Yeah.
lab. Maybe they
And
can.
and then I guess the follow-up to this is if this is truly showing where the best agricultural soils are, should we be proactive in opening up these areas to farming? You know, if one of our climate goals is to produce more food locally, we're gonna need more farmland to do that. Should we be actively, or should we be encouraging land bank or other organizations to be targeting, you know, why purchase this property? Well, it's not just for the scenic view shed, but it's actually the soil and opening it up for agriculture. Should we be pursuing that as a
That would
commission?
be a good use of land bank money, if you ask me.
I'm not disagreeing. The other thing I find fascinating is all these people who have working farms in places where it's not prime agricultural soil. How are they surviving?
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I mean, Morning Glory is on it, but as a working farm, but it's certainly not in prime agricultural soil, and either are a lot of the. plots
None of
are
the ones on
quite-
Chappie. There are a couple
Can
of
you-
farms on
Chris,
Chappie
can you
too.
overlay a map that shows where the working farms are and the prime agriculture soils are, so just to see how much overlap there actually is?
Yeah, there's two of them.
Well, I mean, I can't do it on the fly.
No,
here.
I know you can't do it on the fly, but that, I mean, just so you could see sort of the interplay
Sure.
between where the cluster of working farms. are.
Yeah.
Two slides before this, Ben, it was an email Adam sent out, that he called SharePoint or something. 2 slides before this one, yeah, and now Chris has it up now. You
Yeah.
can see where the farms are, but you have access to it if you want to look at it and compare.
Yeah,
You know.
I don't know how easy it is to overlay it, but
and I wonder, has this captured all of the working farms?
sorry, I won't,
All right,
Thank
I
you.
won't
Thanks.
see you later. I've got to work tonight.
All right. All right.
Yeah. I'm also trying to understand a little bit, Chris, about why you would reduce from prime agricultural soils and farmlands of statewide importance when we're using the state as a reference to pick something that is smaller.
The reason for that change is using only the prime agricultural soils. It then keeps, this data set in sync with what is currently used in the DRI checklist from the version 15 checklist. So that way, at least in conversation, when, if you're a developer and you have the checklist and you're going through and you're seeing if you're in prime agricultural soils, in terms of whether or not your project gets preferred, well then, okay, so you've gone through that step. Then when you come in to be reviewed, this way, at least with this particular category, your site is being reviewed for that same data. It's not suddenly something more expansive. That's prime agricultural soils and farmland of statewide.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is if we think using the state is to our advantage, why would we throw that away?
So the term farmland of statewide importance, don't confuse that for meaning that it's data from the state. It's
Okay.
not data from the state. It's just that within the state of Massachusetts, these are soils that are kind of in this second tier of goodness quality. Again, they're not as good as the prime agricultural soil.
Okay.
Hey, they're still good. But here again, the recommendation to try and keep things, at least this data set, in sync with the DRI checklist criteria. If we're only using the prime ag soil, then it is matching the checklist criteria.
Okay.
We can adapt, we can adopt the lingo. The lingo should be the same, state and us, so that there's no confusion about what we're talking about at
Yeah.
any given point. But there can be degrees of emphasis. How much do you want to emphasize these, what the state is talking about as opposed to what we're looking at? Because we'd have two different levels of farmland and agricultural land. They're two different things.
Mhm.
And so you want to make sure that when you're talking about one, you're not using the lingo that applies to the other.
Yes, I hear you. I guess I'm still struggling with, maybe it's that I don't understand what the state designation of farmlands of statewide importance is.
It's a term of art for them.
So,
It is.
so
They love that stuff.
fortunately, I stuck in this slide,
Okay.
that gives those two definitions. And what they're, in that first category of what they call prime farmland, that is the same as what we've been referring to as prime agricultural soils. Because again, it's important to remember that even though the category is prime farmland, it's really prime farmland soils. Because in many cases, it's land that is not presently farmed.
So what you're saying is this encompasses areas that might be treed now, but might have been farms in the past.
Well.
Or have
no,
never been
no,
farmed.
no,
Okay.
It has nothing to do with what it was in
Oh.
the past. It just has to do with the quality of the soil. And based on soil scientists' expert opinion, this soil has the qualities and composition needed to potentially be a very good location for a farm.
Okay.
But what it currently is used for could be anything. And what it was used for in the past could be anything.
So this is a question of just identifying what we're playing with here.
Yeah, again, the recommendation to, just simply make it that top category of, prime farmland, agricultural soils. Again, keeps it, in sync with the DRI checklist.
But that can be amended pretty easily, Chris, the DRI checklist. I mean, we're supposed to do it every 2 years and we can do it anytime we want. It just needs to go to the AG's office for a final check if we change something.
True, yeah, then it's a case of, then in the checklist, then you're expanding the, that geographic area.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's never really come up in a DRI because most of our DRIs are in areas that fall outside of the prime agricultural soil because they're in Oak Bluffs, Tisbury, and Edgartown.
Right, well, what I'm saying is if you change the checklist, you're then going from this, just the prime agricultural soils. You would then go to this, which is the prime ag soils along with.
Yeah, but it's basically filling in the same areas that are already prime ag soils. It just fills it in. You see, like, there's nothing in Tisbury, Oak Bluffs, or Edgartown. It's basically the rural urban divide of the island. I mean, I think we have that as a map too, don't we? It's like what's considered the rural and what's considered the urban is basically that line that delineates down island areas versus those up island.
Right, well, that's, totally open for conversation when the.
Yeah, I think this is something I'd like to revisit just because I'm not sure I understand it clearly. And I'm a little bit nervous about ruling out places that seem to be farmed already. Or, are farm adjacent. Maybe it strips out, for instance, on Chappaquiddick, Pitney Mouse Farm, which the land bank in Sheriff's Meadow just acquired. It strips out Slipaway Farm.
What do you mean it strips them out?
Well, in other words, if you narrow the definition from current open space guidelines, prime agricultural soil and farmlands of statewide importance, and you just do it as agricultural farmland soils, all of a sudden, there are a whole bunch of areas on Chappaquiddick that are at least sort of farmed or have been farmed in the last 30 years that are no longer meet this criteria.
Have we ever talked to farmers about this map? Chris, in our path, when we have looked at these data sets, have we ever sort of ground truthed it with some of the island farming community?
The soil data, no. I do try periodically to reach out to the farmers to make sure this map is current. And this one is showing the working farms and, and that does show, I believe those farms on Chappie that Katie keeps referencing. But I honestly don't know what information you would be hoping to learn from
I
an
guess I
active
would-
farmer regarding the soil.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would, obviously all this soil is not homogeneously the same. It just falls under the same categorization. So if there was a way to sort of refine the information where you could really sort of identify the value of the property, not just because it falls within this prime agricultural soil, but it also is potentially farmable. It's like there's more to it than just
Right.
what this data set is giving us for value of the land. And I guess that would be in the DRI process, but it's when you cover so much of the land with this, it's sort of, it's everything up island but frost bottoms and the hilltops, basically. And it just doesn't feel like very well defined.
Maybe Ben, if I put you in touch with the woman from USDA, maybe she can shed a bit more light on this than I can.
Okay,
That might be really good.
okay, thanks.
Sure.
Let's keep going so we can see if we can get through most of this.
Sure.
Kate, is this, are we gonna have to do this meeting again? I mean, on the website, it was at 4 p.m. So that's when I last
I
checked.
know,
the meeting.
and I didn't realize that because Adam and I had talked about it and he moved it to 2:30 and then he's not here. And so, yes, I think we probably will have to do it again. I think we can take some of the revisions that we've talked about, where we've said, can we put two of them together rather than have two separate ones? But I think we'll need to go back through it, Ben. So I don't know that we have a quorum. It was just you and Mark and me.
Yeah,
Actually, this
I don't think it's a quorum body anyway.
has been very helpful.
What?
This hour and a half has been very helpful.
Oh, it has. I agree.
Yeah,
I feel sorry for the people who relied on the website. I mean, I emailed Lucy as soon as the other one came out, I emailed her and said, look,
Yeah, things happen.
so yes.
Chris is loaded for bear, so we don't need to worry about losing anything here.
so let's see, another data criteria we currently have is zone ones for public wells, and this is rated a 20. Recommendation is just to keep this one.
So
Why not
Chris,
add the zone 2 as well?
Well, that's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
thanks.
So we're going one by one then.
All right.
And then another data set.
but I mean, I guess, Ben, looking at this one where it's only rated a 4, I see an inherent danger in that 4.
What's the rating?
with-
I missed the beginning. What is the ratings?
So
So,
the
see
rate-
down, you see the 20 down there
Yeah,
below?
yeah. I think we've looked at this before, Chris, right? These ratings that are assigned, the weights. This isn't new.
No, it isn't new. They haven't been changed from when we initially did this back in, I think, 2006. And it
So
was.
that's something that do we want to relook at how we weight things?
It's certainly open for conversation. I mean, this whole thing is just open.
Okay.
I mean, my concern is when I look at the map of, whether it's the primary wells or this one or anything else, it's one aquifer. It's one giant aquifer under this island. It's a very big one, but it is only one.
Why, Chris, can you explain why there are gaps in the
Yeah, so.
zones?
Yeah, so with the current guideline map and the way that it was done back initially in 2006, to basically not sort of since there is overlap when it comes to public well protection between a zone 2, a zone 1, and also the interim area of wellhead protection. When this whole process was initially done back in 2006, we didn't want to, sort of double count those areas protecting the public well. So any area of overlap of a zone 2 with the zone 1 or the interim
this is-
wellhead protection area, those were taken out.
But this seems like it's got more than that. I mean, I could see taking out the zone 1s, but what are those other?
So those other ones
Oh, I
are
see,
these
okay.
funny looking things. And, back again with the initial analysis of 2006, Bill Wilcox, very knowledgeable
Mhm.
geology, hydrology, developed these operational zones of influence. I am recommending going forward that we don't use this data layer anymore because it's not being maintained. And the state now also offers a similar data set, which is the interim wellhead protection area. So some things to consider going forward is, one, rather than, removing those areas of overlap, and have these little funny gaps in the zone 2, we would actually use the entire zone 2. And then this operational zone of influence would be replaced with this map, which is the state's Mass DEP interim wellhead protection area.
What is this one? What is this showing?
Right. It's based somehow on some pumping rates from public wells.
But
And
those are,
again, if you're pumping and drawing so much water for so many days.
so these are the more than 25 people in a single day, determined public
Yeah,
wells.
something
Yeah,
like
okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe this is one of those instances where instead of thinking of it as 3 different data sets, each potentially with their different weight, maybe this is something to consider where we take all 3 of those items and just merge it all as one data set and just give it all the same weight. Because the intention of these 3 data sets is to protect the same thing, which is the public water source.
Yeah, I mean, I would err on overprotecting this than underprotecting it. So even the weighted, if it, you know, obviously the zone ones are the highest category and these ones, but they come with DEP regulations about use in them anyway, so they're already protected. It's really, do we add extra protection outside of the zone one?
Right.
So, you know, if these are 6, and then you go to the next one where it's just the zone 2, you know, you fill in all those,
Mhm.
and then these ones are protected. The zone ones for these, and then you have the smaller zone 2s for all the other public wells. Yeah, there you go, yeah. I mean, I don't even know if we have to call out the zone ones, because they come with such a heavy protection. You know, nobody's developing in a zone 1 anything, basically, can't even put a road through it. So it could just be one map that even includes the zone 1s, because they just have that over protecting from the state regs anyway.
Right, so. So keep the zone 1.
Well, the zone 1, it's rated as a 20, but you can't propose any development in that zone anyway, because they're zone 1s, and so they're just undevelopable. So that the weighting of this one really is meaningless, because nobody's actually going to be doing anything. It's what's developed adjacent to the zone 1s, which is the zone 2
Right.
area. And then, so this should have a higher rating, and then you fill in on this layer all those other contributing zone 2s to the other public wells scattered across the Up Island area. Yeah, there you go. You know, that and both zone 2s should be on here. And this could be a single map.
Okay,
Copies. Did you pick these up here?
No,
Or you
I printed them
by
out.
yourself?
Adam sent it out, I think.
I haven't seen it.
All right. I can change that.
all right, so now if we move on to, woodlands, this is unfragmented woodlands over 50 acres. The recommendation I'm making, for the next iteration is, you know, keeping the same concept of identifying these lands, but using a different source for the data. Changing the source to the more recent vegetation community data set based on aerial photographs from 2021. These
I'll have to send it to you. I don't have your email
unfragmented
in my phone.
woodlands, where it's greater than 50 acres, this does receive a weight of 20.
Okay.
If we updated the data
I
source
appreciate it.
to the
Absolutely.
vegetation communities
We
data,
understand.
it would go from looking like this purple one to looking like the orange. So.
How do you map the vegetative communities? What communities fall in this woodlands category? Because you can have unfragmented wild areas that cross beyond just woodlands or into different types of woodlands. I mean, it's a mosaic map, the community map.
Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
for
Sorry.
woodland, you know, really looking for anything that's forested, whether it's coniferous
This is
or
really useful.
deciduous.
It is. I'm just sorry. It's
That's, you know,
otherwise it
really
didn't go to
including
everybody.
with how this data set in the past has been, you know, teased out from larger land cover data sets. You know,
Because Willow
really
saw it.
focusing on forested, you know, woodland. Thank you. areas. So from that vegetation communities data set, it's, terrestrial forested, terrestrial coniferous or deciduous forest.
I mean, this one, I mean, that's a pretty dramatic change from this map to the one before. And I think you'd have to like layer it so you could see like, where the areas haven't changed, where they're changing, where they're, what's the gain loss in what areas. Do we have any other maps that are gonna show different types of unfragmented vegetation communities?
We do have the other one where it looks at just smaller contiguous areas that are between 10 to 50 acres. And similarly, I'm recommending just changing the data source to the newer vegetation communities. So using that data source, what's shown on orange are those coniferous or deciduous forested areas between, 10 to 50 acres.
What would a map look like if it showed all vegetative classes above 50 acres? I mean, I look at like, along Moshup's Trail, right? Everything sort of southwest of Moshup's Trail is unfragmented, but it doesn't ever show up in one of our data sets here as unfragmented habitat. Or,
I mean, to your point, Ben, how does this play with prime agricultural soils too?
Well, that too, but I'm just wondering, we're making an effort to categorize unfragmented vegetative areas, but we're defining it as only woodland areas. And there are other unfragmented areas on the island that are they're not woodland or not only woodland, but they're unfragmented. Like, how do we map those areas? Why are we only mapping the woodland areas?
Well, we map the prime agricultural soils.
Well, I'm talking about, areas of salt marsh or heathland habitat. Like if you look at like all along Moshup's Trail out to the beach, that's unfragmented habitat of some type. It's not woodland. Why do we want to distinguish the unfragmented by type instead of actual land area? Like a map that just showed unfragmented land, what would that look like compared to this map, compared to, other sort of vegetative communities?
Well, I can certainly take a look at that and show you what it would look like, using just some of the more generalized vegetation community categories from that same data set and see, acreage wise, what might there be. Yeah. Try that.
Can you go back to the 10 to 50 acre map?
Yeah.
How did you get the GIS to create this? You just assign any parcel that is undeveloped?
No, it's not based on the parcel data. So using the aerial photographs from 2021, we hired a consultant to interpret the photographs. And hi, welcome to have a seat. So using the natural heritage of vegetation communities classification scheme, and then looking at the aerial photographs, they delineated areas that are coniferous, deciduous trees, shrubland, it is a multitude of categories. And then for this particular breakout, for the data, just looking at the category of terrestrial land that again is either coniferous or deciduous. And just having the GIS data sort of exploded into their discrete pieces to see what that contiguous acreage is. If it's between 10 to 50 acres or over 50 acres. If that answers your question.
I mean, yeah, I guess how you actually, how much of it has to be connected versus fragmented. I mean,
Well,
I
this,
find this- I
and
find
this gets
confusing.
into, I think this is an interesting point you're raising, Ben, because it gets into, wildlife corridors.
Could you, Chris, maybe what would make this map maybe read clearer is to combine the two and just color them differently. So you see where the 50 acre, because you're gonna find that there's gonna be ones above 50 that then connect to ones from 10 to 50.
Right.
And you could even show under 10, and so there's potentially like a gradient of value, right? Because if your 10 to 50 acre plot is actually next to a 50 acre plot, do you value that differently than if it's not?
Or if your 10-acre plot connects to 50-acre plots.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. The beauty and the curse of GIS is you can show everything a multitude of ways. So
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah, I think some of these
show-
might be interesting to see them as overlays with different colors.
To show the 50 with the 10 to 50. And then you were also interested in below 10 acres?
Well, I mean, maybe we'll see, but yeah, because this map is really hard to understand without seeing the 50 acre one. Because you don't
Mhm.
know sort of like what's in between those areas. Isn't that all wooded, and it's adjacency matters. So under 10 acres, I don't know. I mean, that's a value judgment we can make. Like, do we want to show down to, 3 acres because that's the zoning? Do you have more than, that's like the maximum zoning, requirement on the island? Well, there's some areas where it's 5 acres. You need 5 acres of land. But if you were to say, like, you have a big enough piece of property where you can develop up to 3 acres of it, and then the rest of it is part of contiguous open space, it has different value.
Right.
Yes, I see you.
I mean,
Please don't eat me.
I guess I find a map that like every property is in the map in some way. And it's a gradient of the value of that land versus you're in this area, or you're not
Don't
in
eat
this area.
that.
I think. Distracted by the dog.
We're at 4:15. Looks like you've got other demands on your time, Chris, right now. And I know I have to be teaching in another half hour. So Ben, I think what we're gonna do is to continue this and see if we can pick a time where everybody can show up. And maybe Chris can use that interim to do some overlays so we can see how some of these things fit together. That would be very helpful, I think. That makes sense? 'Cause it's just you and me at this point.
Yeah, that's fine. I actually have other things I gotta get to as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for your time and your interest.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry for the confusion that causes people
Oh,
to not be here.
oh,
And you have Willa's comments there. I didn't
Yeah.
realize they only came to me.
yeah, that's great. No, that's awesome to have. Mhm.
Yeah, I thought they were very helpful, so.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, you're a very pleasant face. And
Thank
maybe
you,
we can
Chris.
make this,
All right, thank you.
maybe we can make this video available to the other members so that they can